All right, thank you so much, Judy. Okay, so the funding for this workshop and basically all the financial and support for this Rain Barrel Make and Take workshop has been provided through DEP's 2019 Environmental Education Grant. And so we thank them. Without that, none of this would be possible. And so the general plan here is I'm going to give you guys some background information about water quality, some issues that we see with water quality due to different sources of pollution, talk about stormwater management, best management practices. Then we'll get into how to make a rain barrel while we're all here. And I know initially this was called a make and take rain barrel workshop, but instead of that, we are going to actually have you guys take and make your rain barrel workshop or your rain barrels as part of the workshop, because we thought it was going to be the safest way for us to do this. So we do it virtually. And so basically you guys are going to get a kit to take home with you and make the rain barrel yourself. And I'll give you instructions not only during this presentation on how to do that, but also I printed out some instructions step by step on how you're actually going to put together your rain barrels and install them. And I will give you guys more information about how to pick up your rain barrels later on in the presentation. So let's start very, very generally here with the water cycle. I know probably all of you are a little familiar with this, but it's good to just kind of start from the beginning. So basically what happens is we are going to have precipitation occur in either snow or rain. And as the precipitation falls to earth, it's going to either run over the surface of the earth in surface runoff, or it's going to go into the groundwater and be a part of the groundwater or the water table underneath the soil. And so as it runs over the surface of the earth, it's going to go through either streams, ponds, lakes, rivers, and eventually go to the ocean. After it enters the surface areas, it's going to be evaporated from the surface into the atmosphere, but it's also going to transpire through plants. And so that's where the groundwater gets soaked up by the plants and then gets transpired into the atmosphere as well. And so sometimes this process is called evapotranspiration, which is just a process of getting the water from the ground or from the surface of Earth back into the atmosphere where it will condense into clouds. And then the whole cycle starts all over again. And so what's a watershed? A watershed is essentially a connection of higher points in the landscape that you can actually connect on a map. It's pretty fun to do. I did this in college. You can just find all of the highest points on a map, put a little dot by them, and then connect those dots, and you can delineate a watershed that way. Another way of looking at it is basically a very, very large bathtub. I know, I have a bathtub with a shower head in it, and essentially if water falls within the boundaries of my bathtub, it will all drain to my drain, which is basically like the Susquehanna River in Northumberland County's case. And so all of these, and actually my next picture probably shows it a little bit better, all of these areas are essentially watersheds. So this is like the Warrior Run watershed. And so if I'm a raindrop and I fall here, I'm going to drain to this point on the Susquehanna River. But if I'm a raindrop over here, I'm not in this watershed. I'm going to drain to the Susquehanna River from this watershed. And so the bathtub analogy is basically, if I had my shower head pointed outside of my bathtub, now it's no longer going to be going to my drain. It's going to be in a different quote unquote watershed. That's the way I like to look at it. And here's just a list of some impaired waterways and impaired watersheds in Northumberland County. And so we can get to some different types of pollution. So there's basically two very broad categories, which are point source pollutions and non-point source pollutions. And non-point source pollutions are essentially a group of pollution that can't be identified by just being able to point at it. That's the way I like to think about it. So if there was, let's say, a chemical plant that was dumping a harsh chemical into the waterway, and you could point to that and say, hey, that is a source of pollution. That would be a point source. But a non-point source is basically a lot of different sources contributing to the pollution of general kinds of pollution. So for example, I have a bunch of pictures here like trash. There's not just one person out there who litters. And so there's a lot of areas where trash can accumulate and enter waterways. And so that would be a non-point source pollution. Again, the same thing with picking up dog poop. There's a lot of people out there that don't pick up dog poop, so you can't just point to one person and say that one person is the sole source of all the dog poop entering the Susquehanna River. The same thing with oil, very common. There's a lot of different sources where oil can drain into waterways. Sediment is actually the #1 non-point source pollutant in Pennsylvania. We have nutrients, and this is a picture of a golf course where golf courses typically have a lot of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus being put and applied onto their landscape because they want really, really green, healthy grass. And so if you have larger areas of grass that are being fertilized, a lot of that can run off into waterways and cause like algal blooms that can actually be detrimental to aquatic life. I have a picture of pills here because pharmaceuticals like prescription drugs and that can actually enter waterways if you flush them down the toilet or down the sink. And actually, I really highly recommend that you don't do that because there's not a whole lot of water treatment facilities that can actually filter through the prescription drugs. And so those kind of just become part of the water in general that we all consume. And so there's a lot of drop-offs that you can actually take your prescription drugs to, like different pharmacies, and they'll actually just take them back and get them recycled properly. And I'll have a lot more information about that in a little bit. Another one, we all live in Pennsylvania, and road salt is a very real part of our winters. But like I said, it's not just one roadway that has the salt. So we have salt being put on all of the roadways in Pennsylvania during the winter. And so those salts will actually eventually find their way into streams. But this is a pretty extreme case. I don't think I've actually seen a roadway with this much salt on it in a long time, but I just Googled a picture of road salt, and that's what came up. So I thought that was a good picture to put in. And so as I was talking about the non-point source pollution, the main causes and ways that non-point source pollution enters waterways are through stormwater runoff. And basically, stormwater runoff is when water from either rain or a snowmelt event doesn't actually get soaked into the ground or infiltrating into the ground, but rather it'll flow over the impervious surfaces like roadways, sidewalks, parking lots, rooftops, and in some cases like bedrock that is not pervious, or it's going to be like a shale bedrock. And essentially, as it moves over these roadways, sidewalks, parking lots, rooftops, it can pick up pollutants, which then can harm stream health or lake health, depending on where your water is draining to, because these pollutants will accumulate in these streams, lakes, rivers, and bodies of water. And so why should we care? And this picture really kind of sums up why we should care about the quality of our water and trying to keep it pristine and not polluted, because we all live downstream from someone. I know I live in Danville, and so upstream from me is Bloomsburg. So what Bloomsburg does affects the water quality that I get in Danville, and so on. And so broadly, we look at Pennsylvania, and what Pennsylvania does impacts other states, especially in the Susquehanna River water basin. That's going to affect the Chesapeake Bay, which then in turn affects the oceans. And so we all have a part to play in helping keep our streams healthy. And so I just have a bunch of slides here that say, what can we generally do to help keep streams clean? And some of these are pretty obvious, and some are a little less obvious. So an obvious one would be cleaning up litter. And this is a simple thing. If you see litter, just pick it up, and if you see a trash can, throw it away. We don't want to see stuff like this with the storm grate being clogged with trash, because that storm grate is essentially going to empty directly into a stream. And so all this trash here, if you can see my mouse, that will eventually end up in a stream or a waterway. This picture really sums it up nicely. No dumping, drains to river. And you can see just by having that paint there, that little sign right there by the storm grate, it's going to help motivate people to kind of keep that area clean, because that is going to basically signal to people, hey, this is an area that we want to keep clean because it's going to go directly into a river. Another thing we can do, I wish I could teach my dog how to do this, is clean up pet waste. I know I always take little bags when I go take my dog for a walk. And even when I let him out in my backyard, I try to clean up his poop as much as I can, as fast as I can, so that I don't forget about it, number one, and step in it, which wouldn't be fun. But also because those nutrients and actually, if your dog is taking any kind of prescription drugs or anything, those will also be found in its feces, and so those can actually leach into the groundwater supply, which you don't want. So yeah, and I really just like this picture, so I put it in here. Please clean up your pet waste. And again, this is the one where I was referencing not flushing prescription drugs down the toilet or down your sinks. There's a lot of pharmacies that have medication drop-offs. You can go to a website, it's called safe.pharmacy/drug disposal. And you can type in your town zip code, select the location of the pharmacy that you want to drop off the prescription at, and you can take that prescription drug to the location. And actually, I recommend talking to someone while you're there just to let them know, hey, I'm going to drop this off. But again, this is pretty common on almost all pharmacies do this because they have proper ways of actually disposing of like pharmaceuticals that end up expiring or something like that. And so they have the proper ways of disposing of drugs instead of putting them down the sink or the toilet. What else can we do? Well, we can not over fertilize our lawns. I know that I read on the back of a fertilizer bag that some companies tell you to fertilize your lawn 4 times a year, and that seems pretty overkill to me. I know I don't fertilize my lawn at all. This is my front yard, so this isn't even where my dog poops. And I think I like to call it, you know, it's decent grass. It's not going to win any awards, but it's nice. And so basically, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of not only having that expense of the fertilizer, but also, do you really need it? If you really feel that you need to fertilize your lawn, maybe do it once a year and do that in early fall. Also, try to use phosphorus-free fertilizers because phosphorus-free fertilizers are going to not have phosphorus, obviously. And phosphorus is what really causes algal blooms. It's like the key nutrient that can really increase the amount of algae found in streams. And so if you can use fertilizer without phosphorus, that'll really help out. Also, I had a family member that used to fertilize their lawn quite often, and also they would fertilize their driveway as well, which isn't really helping out anything. That's just kind of, it's not only wasting your money by not having that fertilizer going into your grass, but it's also going to just have the fertilizer wash into the stream as soon as it rains. So try to sweep the excess fertilizer into the grass if you do, and try to only apply the fertilizer if it's not going to rain within the next 24 hours. Because especially like now, you know, you're going to have the moisture on the grass in the morning, and that's going to help kind of incorporate the nutrients into the ground, into where the roots are going to be for the grass where they need it. But if it rains, it's going to be kind of a faster process and have less time for that nutrients to actually soak into the ground. Another really important one is to recycle motor oil. If you have any motor oil that spills while you're changing oil or something like that, use some kitty litter to kind of soak up the oil and then scoop that kitty litter up and put it in the trash. This is another good website. It's called Earth 911. And you can actually go to that website and type in a lot of different materials, including motor oil, and put in your zip code. And then you can select a location to go and take those materials to recycle. And I found there was even places where you can look up for batteries, computers, plastic bags, and stuff like that. So it's a good resource. And I just found that through a quick Google search. Another big thing is you guys knew it was going to happen, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Basically, you know, we want to reduce the amount of plastics that we use, reuse packaging if we can, and recycle what we can't reuse or reduce. So I know I see a lot of these in grocery stores all the time where it's individually packaged, like carrots or apples or peppers, and those aren't really helping out a whole lot. You know, I would rather go to like a farmer's market and get a box like this, where not only are you kind of stimulating the local economy, but you're also going to reduce the amount of plastics being used here. This plastic is basically useless. It just kind of keeps it in one spot, whereas this is going to be just as good of a quality, and you're not actually going to be using that plastic. Reuse grocery bags if you can. Actually, you guys are going to be getting your rain barrel packets in reused grocery bags. We had a bunch here at the Conservation District, and I just said, basically we just need something to hold the materials for you guys to use. So they don't have to be very pretty. So they're just reused grocery bags. But besides that, I try to use reusable grocery bags, as in like a cloth or a fabric grocery bag. And remember to wash them. Just as a side note, I know they can get kind of gross, but if you just throw them in the wash, they'll get clean pretty quick. So, and trying to use and buy products that have glass bottles rather than like a plastic bottle. I try to do that when I can. Aluminum cans are good too. They can be easily recycled. Another great thing is to plant riparian buffers. I know this one's kind of a harder thing to do. It's, we all talk about reduce, reuse, recycle, but getting out there and actually planting trees is a little bit harder than just, choosing what you want to buy. But the reason that riparian buffers are so helpful and so critical to stream health are that they can soak up a lot of water. Basically, if you have a 100-foot tall tree with 200,000 leaves, it can soak up 11,000 gallons of water in one growing season. And that's just in one growing season. Think about the amount of water that actually gets taken up throughout that tree's lifespan. So here's a sycamore. I don't even know how old that sycamore would be, but that is going to take up so much water in its lifetime and really prevent any kind of nutrients and slow down waterways or slow down water that's coming off of this agricultural field from getting into this stream here. And so having trees along streams benefits not only just be able to see like, hey, that's a pretty area right beside a stream, but it also has real benefit for the stream itself. Another less easy to do, but also incredibly beneficial thing that you can do is to have a rain garden. This is a conservation district, and I'm not exactly sure where, but essentially it's a small depression in the land that has, this is actually a pipe coming from a parking lot. And so the water is draining from the parking lot through this pipe and into this small depression area here. And so this is 3 inches of rain that fell in this area. And this is 6 hours after the rainfall event. Here's 24 hours after, and here's 30 hours after. And so basically what this does is it slows down the surface runoff from going directly into a stream, and it will hold the water there for a while and allow that water to soak back into the ground. And so instead of all this water going right into a stream and picking up pollutants and all different kinds of bad stuff on the surface of the land, it's going to be taken to this one small area and slowly allowed to drain into the groundwater over time. And so finally, what else can you do? You can install a rain barrel, and now we'll start to get into it. Basically, a rain barrel is a container that collects and stores rainwater from your rooftop to use later. So this water can be used to water your lawn or your garden. You can use it to wash your car if it's a fresh rain. You can use it to wash windows. But we'll get into the things that you can't use the water for. You don't want to use it to drink. You don't want to use it to bathe, stuff like that. But essentially, rain barrel benefits you by reducing stormwater runoff. So just like that rain garden area, you're going to be capturing the water instead of allowing it to run over the surface of the land. And you're going to be able to use that water the way you want it to use. And so here's a picture, there's some water running off of this roadway here, and it's going to collect in the street where it's going to pick up pollutants and then run into a stormwater grate and then into a stream. And so if you had a rain barrel here, all this water, well, at least 55 gallons of the water are going to be trapped instead of going directly into the stream. And, especially if you're using it for a lawn or a garden, or even the overflow valve that you can direct that water to, you can put that in an area where there's grass. That's going to actually recharge the groundwater area because you're going to have it flowing over a pervious surface, not an impervious surface, and it's going to percolate down into the water column, into the water table. Another benefit would be that, you don't have to spend the money to get water from your tap and actually water your garden. You're just going to get water for free. You get to store it. I know I'm not going to go out and charge you guys for your rain barrels, and I'd be the only one that would. So you can actually store this water for a little bit, especially when there's drought. It can be really beneficial to help water your lawns and gardens. and it's also free of dissolved minerals. And so here's a quick calculation that you guys can make to judge how much storage capacity you would need. Now, most people are only getting one rain barrel, but at least one from us. But you can calculate this by measuring your rooftop. So let's say it's 28 feet by 40 feet, and you get a 1/4 inch of rain, right? And so basically you're going to multiply out the length and width of your roof to get total square foot area. And then you multiply that by 0.6 and by the total number of inches to get 168 gallons of water. So if your roof was out in a rainstorm, and obviously it's going to be, you are going to collect a rain event where there was a 1/4 inch of water being rained down. You would need to have basically 2-3 rain barrels to capture all of the water. But we will have an overflow valve that the water is going to run out of the overflow valve and not just run out over the top. So yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So when you're looking at rain barrels, you can buy one or you can make one. And those are really the only two options. Now, if you make one, you're looking at right around $12 to $25. In this case, you guys are going to get one for free, which is even better. But you can buy these rain barrels. I think ours were $10 per barrel. And then you can just kind of do what you need to do and make it so that it will collect rainwater. And if you want to go buy it like a really fancy one like this, you're looking at around $100, $250. Now they look really nice, but you can also decorate one like this to make it look pretty nice. And I can show you that in a little bit as well. So I personally think if you wanted to get a rain barrel, just one that's going to be useful and work just as well as one of these, I think it pays for itself in no time just to make it yourself. And so there's a lot of different instructions and do-it-yourself designs to make rain barrels, but I will walk you guys through exactly how I did it and how you guys can do it too. Here's a good picture of someone doing it. And here, these are, and I'll get into this in a little bit, these are basically couplers or connectors that you can connect to your downspout to the actual inlet valve for your rain barrel to collect the rainwater. And so the general design is you're going to have a downspout coming off of the top of your roof. You're going to have an elbow, or for that previous picture, a coupler that's going to be flexible enough to be able to go right into your rain barrel at the top. And then it's going to collect water down here, and you're going to have an overflow valve where the water will be able to be directed somewhere where it's safe. You don't want to have your overflow valve just leaking right onto your house, because that can cause problems with water leaking into your basement and stuff like that. So you don't want that. So I highly recommend having like a garden hose or something leading away from your house, maybe into a grassy area. And so basically we have 55-gallon barrels, and we rinsed these out for you guys. I had some help from a local Boy Scout troop, and they did a wonderful job. And so we rinsed these rain barrels. They were food grade safe, and so they should be good to go to collect water. Another thing you're going to want to do is to elevate the rain barrel on like a cinder block, or if you have another surface that's higher up, not only because it's going to allow you to have easier access to the spigot, but also it's going to give you more drainage pressure, so that you'll be able to have, if you attach a garden hose down here to your spigot, you're going to have a lot more pressure that you can actually maybe direct that water somewhere. And here's another kind of a real life design. Again, here's the inflow valve where the water's going to be coming down out of your downspout into the barrel. The overflow valve is on this picture on the front, but I put them on the back for you guys. That way it's kind of easier to, I think it's a little more aesthetically pleasing. That way you don't have just a hose sticking out of the front. Down here you have your spigot, and here it's elevated on, looks to be like some rock. And so here are the materials that you guys are going to be receiving, and some materials that you guys are probably going to want to buy. You're going to get a pre-drilled barrel. You're going to get the spigot and the overflow valve. You're going to get an atrium grate, some mosquito mesh, some mosquito dunks, some silicone sealant, and an instruction sheet. And like I said, you're going to want to get like a garden hose, maybe have something like cinder blocks where you can set the actual rain barrel on, something so that you have that space that you can actually use it. And you're going to need to get a downspout coupler / connector. And there's a lot of different options for this. I think these that are kind of flexible, you can do what you want with them, are probably the best bet. That way, you know, if your rain barrel is a little bit farther away from your house, you can kind of use this to reach. And this one is like $9 at Lowe's, so they're pretty inexpensive. And I also have a sheet in your instructions on what you'll need. So finally, let's get to the instructions. All right. So if you're going to do this all on your own from scratch, you're going to have to be cutting some holes. Now, I did that for you. So if you're going to make some yourself, go out and buy your own rain barrels and just do it, you're going to need to cut some holes. So you're going to want to have some gloves, ear protection, and some glasses so that you don't have pieces of plastic flying all over the place and getting in your eyes and stuff. So there's me. I have all my stuff on, ready to go. And here's just a picture of everything I had available to me to actually put this together. So we had a pretty heavy duty screw gun here and some hole saws. Now, some of the rain barrels have 4-inch diameter holes and some have 3-inch diameter holes, but the coupler size is the same for both. And so basically we had 2 different atrium grate sizes that we could get at the time. And so I needed to get 2 different hole saws that would actually accommodate those. We have some mosquito mesh here, and I pre-cut those for you. Here's our silicone sealant. Here is the 3/4-inch hole saw for your spigot and your overflow valve to connect to. I used a marker to mark where I was going to cut. And we have some mosquito dunks here that you can break up and put in the top of your rain barrel to prevent mosquitoes as well. So here's a picture of everything I had. And also, I didn't take a picture with my wrench in there, so I got another picture of my wrench. Just put it in there because you're going to want one to actually tighten down the overflow valve and the spigot. And those actually thread on pretty nice, by the way. They matched up to the hole pretty well. But again, you're going to probably want to seal it just to make sure there's no water leaking out over time. And so step 1, you're going to want to drill your holes. And I did this for you. This is an example of one that I did just so that I could take pictures of this so I could describe it to you guys, but also put one together to make sure everything fit. And it did, which is good. So here is where you would drill the inlet for the downspout connector. Here is the bottom where you would have your spigot, and this is the top of the back where your overflow is going to be, so that the barrel doesn't completely fill to the very, very top, and then you would just have water running out of the coupler, which isn't ideal. And you can direct the garden hose away from your house from this overflow valve and put it into like some grass or something somewhere, or a garden. And so step 2, you're going to insert the faucet and the overflow valve. And so I used a wrench to do this because they thread on pretty nicely, but once you get to the bottom, it's pretty hard to turn just with your hand. And so I would also use like a disposable glove or something to actually apply the silicone, because it comes out nicely, but you're also going to want to maybe smooth it over with your finger or something. That way it's not just like a beaded silicone sealant. It's just going to be like a nice layer of silicone over it. So here I am, I cut the holes. That's where the overflow valves goes in. There it is actually in. Here it is, me silicone sealing those actual valves. Step 3 would be to cut the mosquito mesh. And I did this for you guys. It's part of your packet. And so we have some flexible, basically it was like a repair kit for a screen door. And what we did was we cut these into 8x8-inch sections, and those fit nicely over the hole of the inlet valve, or the inlet area where the downspout connects. And I do not recommend siliconing down your atrium grate and the actual mosquito mesh itself. And the reason I don't recommend that is because you're going to want to be able to remove that and clean out the debris. Because if you have leaves and stuff coming into your rain barrel, you're not going to want to have that just in there perpetually. You want to be able to kind of take it out, dump it out. And if you're able to remove this, you'll be able to get like your hand in there and get some of the leaves out and stuff. But if you silicone it down, it's going to kind of stay in there and it's going to be hard to get out. So I don't recommend siliconing that down. And so step 4, place the rain barrel on an elevated surface. I know it's hard to see there, but there's a cinder block underneath there. And attach your downspout and your garden hose. So this is the overflow valve. That's my garden hose. And there's the spigot attached to the garden hose. And all of the overflow valves and the spigots are garden hose friendly. They fit garden hoses, standard size. So they shouldn't be hard to match up. If you buy any old garden hose, it should work. And so some things that you don't want to use the water for. Again, I mentioned this earlier, you don't want to drink the water, you don't want to cook with the water, and you don't want to bathe with the water. The main reason being, here you have, leaves and dirt and stuff that are accumulating in your gutters. Now, this isn't a picture of my gutter, but my gutters look almost as bad. I need to get out there and actually clean them out. But basically, some of this stuff is going to be flowing into your rain barrel, and you just don't want that, to be used for drinking the water, cooking, cleaning, stuff like that. But you're also going to want to clean your gutters regularly so you can prevent some of these leaves and stuff from going into your rain barrel and kind of clogging everything up. That'll just help reduce the debris going into your rain barrel. And so another thing is, if you ever use like a moss killer or something on your rooftop, I would not use that water that you collect with the rain barrel on your plants, because I don't know exactly how that moss killer would harm plants. And so you just kind of want to be careful of that. Just be aware that you might want to drain that out into a grassy area, maybe that you don't particularly like, or maybe you want to dump it out and wait a little while to actually use that water again for your plants. So the rain barrels that I'm going to be giving you guys are probably pretty safe. There's only a small hole in the top, but I know there were some models where if you cut the entire top off, you're going to want to be very careful and make sure that there's a lid or some kind of a screen over it, because again, these are about 55 gallons. And so that's a lot of water. And if you had a child or anything, or an animal or a pet or something fall in there, that would be not the best case scenario, especially since it's a pretty smooth surface on the inside. You wouldn't really get a whole lot of grip. You're going to want to drain these pretty regularly. You don't want to hold it for more than, I would say, a week and a half. Clean them occasionally. It's not, again, if you're using it for gardening, for watering your lawn and stuff, grass is pretty resilient. You're not going to be killing it just by having some dirty drain water from your roof. But, if you get some really gross stuff in there, you're going to want to clean it every now and then. So here are some frequently asked questions that I found. And so I wanted to address some of these right away. Will the water smell? Well, the answer to that is it can, and that won't hurt plants, but it can be a little unpleasant. So what you can do is you can actually empty the rain barrel pretty frequently. Again, I wouldn't let it sit for more than a week and a half, because that'll kind of give it an opportunity to, if there's any bacteria or any kind of leaf debris that's kind of decomposing, that's going to start to smell a little. But you can also add a small amount of baking soda, and that should not harm your plants. And basically that'll kind of help take the smell out. And what is the green scum on top of the stored water? And so basically that's going to be algae. And so algae can really grow in a lot of different areas where sunlight is available to the water source itself. And so the algae can grow, especially if you are leaving that water in for quite a long time. You're not draining out your rain barrel enough. You're going to probably have some kind of algae on there, and that's not going to hurt your plants. But again, it can kind of, especially as the algae starts to decompose a little bit, can start to smell. So what you can do is put 1 or 2 capfuls of bleach into the water. And it's very important you don't just put the bleach into the empty rain barrel, because that'll kind of evaporate a little bit and make it pretty strong. So have the water with the algae in there, and just add a little bit of bleach, let it sit for a few days, and then scrub it out after you empty that. But again, don't empty the bleach water onto plants. That is going to probably harm your plants. Just kind of be careful with that. If you've ever cleaned with bleach before, it can stain clothes and stuff. So I would probably try to just make sure you're frequently draining the rain barrel, and then you can kind of avoid using the bleach and stuff. So another big thing, how do you keep mosquitoes out? You don't want to keep that water for too long and then allow the mosquitoes to breed, because that can really, cause some problems for you. I know West Nile virus is a problem in Pennsylvania. And so if you keep your gutters clean and you empty your barrel regularly, about every week and a half, as well as having these mosquito dunks, the mosquito mesh. And if you want, you can even add a 1/4 cup of veggie oil every time it rains, and that'll actually put a film over the top of the water and not allow the mosquito larvae to breathe. And so that'll kind of naturally kill them off, which is kind of a nice safe alternative way to having the mosquitoes not be able to breed in your rain barrel. But again, you guys will be receiving a full mosquito dunk with your kit. And so what I would actually recommend is breaking these into 4 small pieces, because each one of these rings, these little donuts, are good for 100 square feet of water. And so your rain barrel is not nearly 100 feet of square water, because these kind of float on the surface. And so basically, these are made up of like bacterial larvicide, so little bacterial colonies all packed together in here, and then they will actually enter the digestive system of the mosquito larvae themselves, and the mosquito larvae will die. But these are really safe for plants, for pets, for people. These are used very commonly in like ponds, lakes, stuff like that. So I would just highly recommend breaking this up into 4 small pieces every now and then, replacing those pieces so that you don't have problems with mosquitoes. But some other things, just as a side note, not because of your rain barrel, but just for keeping you and your family and your pets and everyone else safe, you can check around your house for some mosquito hotspots. These are like bird baths, trash cans that have maybe a leaky lid where there's water sitting in them, children's toys that maybe have some water sitting in them, tires that could collect water, kiddie pools, stuff like that. Anywhere that there's standing water for a longer than 1 week, basically the mosquitoes can go to that water source, lay their eggs, and the larvae can start to grow. And it takes about 1 week for them to fully emerge. And so just by being aware of that and going around your backyard and your house, you can see all these different areas where potentially mosquitoes could be. And by taking care of those, draining them out, making sure there isn't sitting water around, you can really protect you and your family. And so once you guys have your rain barrels up and running, you can send us pictures. I would love to see pictures of rain barrels. We could put them on our Facebook and stuff. And if you want to make them prettier than the really pretty blue color that they currently are, and you'll see them, you can actually clean them by taking a 1-to-1 mixture of vinegar and water and scrubbing the outside, and taking some sandpaper to rough up the surface a little bit, which would really help the paint stick. Then you can vacuum the barrel surface, rinse it with water. Then you can actually put a coat of primer on it, paint the barrel, and then some polyurethane on top will really help it stay nice. Again, don't paint the inside of the barrels. That seems a little self-explanatory, but you'll probably end up having some paint chips floating around in your water, and they'll go all over your garden, and that can be its own issue. So you don't want paint kind of all over the water you're using. And we'll be checking in with you guys. If you guys have any problems putting together your rain barrels, please let us know, reach out to me, and I'll do whatever I can to kind of help you guys get the rain barrels up and running. And if you need any more instruction or something like that, I'd be happy to help. And so we'll be kind of sending out an email probably a few weeks or so, just seeing how everybody's doing with their rain barrels, if you need any help. And so finally, here are some pickup instructions. The address where your rain barrels will be at is 182 Hauser Road, Sunbury, PA. And so I'll be there on Tuesday, June 1st and Wednesday, June 2nd from 5 to 7 p.m. And so if you guys are around and you can make that work, that's great. If you are picking up multiple rain barrels for, say, someone in your family that's also attending the event or something like that, just give me a heads up that you're coming and you're going to pick up multiple rain barrels, just so I know. Also, it's going to be really important that you have a truck or something where a rain barrel that's going to fit. You don't want to show up maybe with like a little sedan car, because it's a 55-gallon barrel. So they're relatively large. Now, they don't weigh a lot because there's no water in them, but just that size is going to be necessary to have some kind of a truck or something. And I have to say some thank yous here. Brittany Hartzell from the Columbia County Conservation District gave me some great tips and tricks for how to do this. Matt Willard from Dauphin County, also the same. He gave me some tips and tricks on what to do and how he does rain barrel workshops. Also, the Boy Scout Troop number 309. This is them helping out clean rain barrels. And we had 25 rain barrels. So if I had to do that all myself, that would be pretty hard to do. So if there's a lot of help, it really only took us like an hour, which was great. It was incredible. I also have to thank the Little Shamokin Creek Watershed Association for allowing us to use their property to not only clean the rain barrels, but to also store the rain barrels while we kind of had to wait out to do the event. and actually have this event due to COVID. You know, they've been storing these rain barrels for us for a few years now. So I really appreciate that. And of course, DEP for providing the funding for this. And so do you guys have any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself, or if you've typed them into the chat, we can try to answer those now.
Two things from the chat, Ben, that I just wanted to mention. First of all, Joe Reed offered the suggestion, which is a great suggestion for reusing plastic bags, taking them to a local food pantry, and they will reuse them for handouts. And also, I think any type of used bookstore or a used thrift store, I believe will also sometimes take donations of plastic bags that they'll reuse for folks that come into a thrift store or a used bookstore. So really appreciate that suggestion. Also, Joe wanted to mention that he ordered a diverter from Amazon that uses some of the water and has a 1-inch tube from a downspout to a rain barrel. So appreciate both of those suggestions. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
And Joe also mentioned asking if we ever worked with the Professional Recyclers of Pennsylvania regarding composting events. I do know that we've had communication with them in the past. I don't think that we've ever actually done an event with them, but I am aware of their existence. And so that's something we could certainly look at, particular, you know, possibly in the future working with them.
Yeah, excellent.
John Bauer also mentioned Wise Markets is starting to accept recycling bags again. I know that's where I take my paper bags, is to the local Wise in Sealands Grove. So yes, they are doing that. And Todd DeRoba also just said, awesome presentation, Ben, thank you. So definitely wanted to note.
Thanks, Todd. And I will, just as another side note, I will let you all know, I will send out an email of the location where you can pick up the rain barrel and the date and time again. So don't worry if you didn't get a chance to write that down. I'll be sending out an email right after this presentation with all that information so that you have it readily available. And you can print it out if you want, just so you know. And if those times and dates don't work for you, email me, call me, let me know, and we'll try to figure out something else where I'll be there to help you not only load up the rain barrel, but also to make sure that someone's there to help you.
Where can you pick up an extra barrel if you need it?
If you need it, that's a good question. I will have to check,
for the overflow, like.
For the overflow, yeah. So
Yeah,
it depends, and it depends on how many people we have that actually end up getting a rain barrel. But we can talk about that, and I will check where we got our actual rain barrels from. I know I have a list of where we actually bought them from, and they had, I think, quite a few. And so I can give you that information, Jacob, just to follow up with you if you wanted to go buy one yourself for like $10 or something like that.
Yes, please.
Okay, I will. I'll make a note of that. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Jill
No.
also said, awesome presentation with great information. Thank you. So thank you again for those kind comments. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And so if there aren't other questions so far, we also have a brief survey. I know maybe this wasn't mentioned, but let me see if I can advance my slide here.
Also, Ben, John Bauer just asked if you will have this class available for others to view.
And so that's a great question, and we can kind of talk about that in a little bit, because it looks like we only had 14 participants, and we did have like 24, 25 people sign up. And so I was going to see if maybe we could work out a way to see if those people would be willing to either view the recording or maybe we would have some kind of an outdoor in-person event where I could actually give the presentation again, possibly. And I can kind of, again, let you guys know if there was, I'll probably just email the whole group that I had in the beginning, just to kind of reiterate that, you know, there's still some rain barrels left over. We can try to get those out to people as much as we can. So yeah, I will be in contact with everybody about that. And so we do have a survey that you guys I would love if you guys could actually fill out. It's an online survey through SurveyMonkey. And if you aren't able to do the online survey, I also have some hard copy paper surveys that you can fill out when you come pick up your rain barrels themselves. Now the SurveyMonkey, the online survey, is relatively painless. It's I believe 7 questions. It's pretty quick, and it just gives us some feedback right away on how we did, some suggestions on what to do in the future maybe. And if that's not something you want to do right now, again, we have some hard copy papers that I can hand out and you can fill out right when you get your rain barrels. And I believe the link to that is in the chat.
Morgan Bellsite asked if it's possible to receive a recording of this class. And yes, we can certainly make that available.
Yeah, that would be great. That's why we recorded it. All right, well, if we have the SurveyMonkey link in the survey, in the group chat, I will stop sharing. And it should be in the chat, so let's just see. Okay, yep, there it is.
Amy Zimmerman also commented, this was a great presentation. She stumbled upon the information for it by accident, and she's so glad she did. We're glad you did too. So
yes, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep. And Morgan, not a problem. We'll make sure we get a copy of it to you so that you can make sure you didn't miss anything.
And again, I just want to say thank you to everybody that showed up and actually participated here, because I know, you know, especially over Memorial Day weekend, it might not have been on the top list of something you wanted to do today, but I really appreciate you guys showing up. This is something that you can do to kind of help keep your waterways cleaner. And also now you get to use some free rainwater. And I am eager to meet all of you in person when we come pick up the rain barrels.
Okay, and we have a lot of people submitting kind comments, thanking Ben for the presentation. So thank you so much for your kind comments. For our first time doing a virtual presentation, I know that we were both very nervous about it and how it was going to go. So appreciate your patience and participating in this.
All right, well, I guess if everyone's kind of doing their own thing with if you're taking the survey online, or if you're gonna do the survey in person when you show up to pick up your rain barrels, I think that was all I had.
Thanks for giving up on Saturday.
Yeah, hey, thanks for showing up. I really appreciate everyone. So everyone take care and stay safe, and I will see you shortly to help you guys load up your rain barrels. And you'll be receiving an email soon with more information about how to pick them up. So thanks so much,
Thank you, Ben.
everyone.
Good job.
Thank you so much.